Welcome to In Your Defense, Galveston and Beyond.
Welcome to In Your Defense, Galveston and Beyond with Mark Diaz and John Clements. Mark is a passionate criminal defense attorney with over 25 years of experience defending the rights of Texans. And together we're excited to discuss all things criminal defense law. So Mark, welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's always such an engaging conversation. I'm looking forward to our episode today, which is on your rights during search and seizure, what police can and can't do. So I think, Mark, to start with, search and seizure is one of those things that maybe we've read about or we see in the movies or whatever. Can you break down what search and seizure actually means under Texas and federal law?
It's exactly what it sounds like. It means that law enforcement is wanting to effectuate a search of your property on your person, in your house, in your car. It's going to be a search for evidence, and that evidence is going to be used against you if found.
Got it. And so it's probably not, you probably don't wake up in the morning thinking I'm going to have the law attempt to, search and seize things from me. So I'm probably not thinking about how to respond. So let's talk a little bit about that. What are some common situations you see where people maybe don't even realize it, but they've given up their rights during a search?
So, consenting to a search. When the police say, "Can I put my hand in your pocket? Can I come in your house? Can I search your car?" The answer is no. Respectfully, right? Just like what I would tell you when you're exercising your right to remain silent, do it respectfully. If you consent, then you've given up any challenges. If you consent to a search, the officer doesn't have to get a warrant. The officer doesn't have to convince a judge that there's sufficient evidence to grant a warrant to search whatever it is. And you've essentially given them the tools they need. Anything they find, now you're going to be charged with. So the biggest mistake we always see is that consent.
So, and I can imagine this happening to, let's say, someone who's generally law abiding and they get in a situation and they think, well, I'll allow them to search my car because I'm innocent. I have nothing to hide. How would you respond to that kind of a thought process?
Well, so law officers don't ask to search for no reason, right? I've been pulled over in my life plenty, right? For speeding, traffic infractions. I've never been asked to search my car. So generally, if they're asking, they have a suspicion of something, right? And so the answer would be no, respectfully, but no, you do not have my consent, right? So a lot of what we see these in are anything from house to car, right? And the thing is, if you're in your car and the officer asks if he can search your car and you respectfully say no, well, they can detain you for a reasonable amount of time to bring out a drug sniffing dog, let's say, and walk around the exterior of your car. And if the dog alerts, then that's going to change the situation. If the dog doesn't alert, they're going to let you go. But there's so much involved. There was a case recently where the dog jumped through an open window of the vehicle and got inside. The dog did find something, but that evidence was suppressed because it was a breach of the dog jumping in the window. So again, that person did have contraband on him, but the evidence was suppressed and he's free today because he did not give consent. Then the officers went too far with the dog. But the bottom line is the biggest error I see is people consenting, even if it's for the reason that you think. And, sort of to that end, sometimes in jury selection on possession cases, I tell people, part of possession of anything is intentionally and knowingly, right? And so they have to prove that I intentionally and knowingly possess something. So if I wake up tomorrow morning and I have a flat, but I've got to get to court and my neighbor's standing outside and he sees it and he says, "Hey, Mark, take my car, just come back after court." And I take his car. I don't know what's in his car. I don't know what's under the seats. I don't know what's in his trunk. And so they wouldn't have intent. But if I give you consent to search my neighbor's car, because I'm driving it, right? So I'm in control of it. And I give you consent and you find contraband in there, it's now getting put on me because I gave you consent to search the car. So, it just kind of ties back in.
Yeah, and it's fascinating fascinating to me the way that the words you're choosing to use, because it really gets at that there's a specific rule set around searches and seizures. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, like, what are the specific rules about when a police officer could search a car or a house or your person?
Okay, so it depends on a lot of things. The car, one we see a lot is the odor of marijuana coming from the vehicle. If they can articulate that well enough, the search of the car is going to be justified without your consent. But then, of course, that gets into, did they find any evidence of burnt marijuana or marijuana unpackaged, so that it would be possible to have an odor of marijuana coming from the vehicle. Your house is going to almost always require a warrant, unless there's someone in immediate danger or they're like in immediate pursuit of you and you run through your front door and you've just committed a very serious offense. They're going to be able to kick down your door to get you, right? Because public safety issue. But under normal circumstances, to search a house, it's almost always going to require a warrant, unless, of course, the homeowner consents. And that gets tricky when, for instance, a younger person lives at home with mom and dad. Police knock on the door. Mom or dad says, yeah, you can come in and search our house. Of course, they don't know that their kid has whatever in his room. The police end up finding it. So then we end up going through a whole fight of, did the kid have an expectation of privacy in his bedroom such that his parents couldn't consent to the search of his room? Like, it gets really involved and really complicated. Warrants, if they can convince a judge sufficient facts that would warrant the judge signing a search warrant, then there's not much you can do. At that point, I may end up trying to fight the information that was placed in the search warrant and the information given to the judge, such that I can attack that maybe a warrant should have never been issued. But warrants are tougher to beat. But at the same time, they have a higher standard. Officers have to actually convince a judge of sufficient facts to justify the search of your home. Your person is going to depend on the encounter. Why? So they can frisk depending upon the encounter, right? Not if you're just walking down the road and they want to come up and frisk you. We're not there. But if you're being investigated for something and the officer can frisk the outside of your clothing just to make sure you don't have any weapons, right? We have had cases where the officer went ahead and went in someone's pockets and pulled out a baggie. We've been able to successfully defeat those cases because there's no way you can confuse a weapon with a tiny little bag filled with cocaine. So it's going to depend on the reason for the encounter, but just don't consent.
Yeah, right. Just politely, respectfully say no. That's what.
Right.
So I want to dig into that last example you mentioned about the instance in which the individual was being maybe frisked for a weapon and the police ended up finding, drug paraphernalia. And that, probably that isn't what they were looking for. And it might be the fact that they feel like their rights were violated during that search. So if anyone feels that that's happened to them, anything like that, their rights were violated during a search, like, what should they do about that?
That's my job. I mean, in other words, I'm the one that's going to discover that, right? Assuming you've told me everything and then I go through the evidence. And so that's going to be my job. Now, when you say to do about it, so there are certain cases that may potentially involve violating someone's civil rights, right? So that person would need to go speak to a lawyer who does civil rights cases. But even those lawyers won't take the case until I've disposed of the case, right? Because if I lose, your civil rights case went away, right? Same if you think the officer did something wrong that should be reported to internal affairs or whatever, it's generally the same thing. I say, I understand, but you need to let me win the case before you go complaining on the officer or doing anything like that. So I would guide you in that once we got to that point.
Got it. Yeah. It sounds like there's some additional points to consider before you start doing anything. And you're going to need to have, a good lawyer presence like you to kind of walk through that process. Right. And then I wanted to touch also on this this last case that you mentioned. And also, I think you mentioned the police dog that jumped through a car window. And when you're dealing with something like the police and maybe they conduct a search that wasn't consented to or is illegal in some way, what happens to the evidence that's presented? Does that still get to be used in court? Does it get thrown out? How does that work?
It's called the fruit of the poisonous tree. It doesn't come in. If it was obtained illegally, it cannot be used in court. So the examples I gave you, the people did get caught with contraband, but they are not convicted people today.
And is that, in your opinion, another good reason why you need a good criminal defense lawyer for your case? Because I just get the feeling that if I was representing myself, I wouldn't know how to get, illegally obtained evidence thrown out. Like, I feel like that's something you should do.
Right. And that kind of goes back to what I said earlier. It's never a good idea to represent yourself. And then at the same time, I think before we've talked about hiring an attorney, that's the other reason you need to meet with your attorney, speak to your attorney about the case, and make sure you're comfortable with who you hire before, you make that decision.
Yeah, absolutely. To your earlier point, you wouldn't, want to diagnose yourself if you're feeling sick. You want to go to a doctor. So just like
right.
You want to hire the right person for the job, hire
right.
the expert. Is there anything else about search and seizure that you would recommend a person know so that they can be prepared for if and when this happens to them?
Don't do illegal stuff.
That's always a good start.
So it's going to go back to the other thing. If you know that you're in possession of something that you shouldn't be, just don't consent to the search. And then I have something I may be able to fight. If you consent, you've given up your rights. I've lost all challenges. And, when I say consent, it goes back to officers wear body cams now. So your consent's going to be on camera. In addition to that, and this happens a lot on residences in Galveston, they'll have you sign a written consent to search. So now, not only are you on body cam, you've signed a document saying, I give you authority to search my property. I've lost all challenges that I may have had regarding any legal justification for a search. So protecting themselves during the encounter would be just be respectful, but do not consent. It may mean that you're going to invest more time in the traffic stop or whatever the situation is, but it's going to benefit you in the long run.
Yeah, that seems to be the theme of the show today is just be respectful, know your rights, exercise your rights, and then go hire Mark to represent you if you need it. So Mark, thanks again for jumping on the show. As always, it's been informative and it's extremely valuable information you're sharing. So thank you. Yeah, absolutely. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on Defense on the Coast with Texas criminal defense attorney Mark Diaz. To connect with Mark, you can visit texascriminaljustice.com. Please like and subscribe and leave a review. And with that, have a great day.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.